Hey guys, it's Kim Jong-spoon and welcome to Kerbal Space Program. This is going to be our first KSP video on the channel, but for you WoT Blitz fans out there, fear not, because we will still have 2 World of Tanks Blitz videos per week, one on the weekend, hopefully, and one midweek, hopefully. Again, I say hopefully because it's hard to actually do that when it's a random battle game and when it's online, so if my Wi-Fi crashes, sorry you're not getting a video, and if teams are terrible, then there's really nothing to show. We're doing a science mode speedrun to place a flag on every planet and moon that you can actually land on in the Kerbal system. So we're starting a new science mode save. This is year 1, day 1, looking at the tech tree there, and we have one thing unlocked. We only have science as a resource in this. There are other modes that have what are they? There are reputation and credits, which are really hard. I don't like either of them. The career mode in Kerbal Space Program makes you do stupid things like take random people to the moon because they want to, just so you can have enough money to launch a science mission to Mars. So, yeah, not super stoked to play career mode. I got to like Eve once, but then I was like, nah, this is way too long. So as you can see here, we have very few parts. We have a capsule, solid rocket motor, a little girder thing, parachute, fins, and a little bit of science. The 2 things on the left there are from Kerbal Engineer. I have just a couple mods in this save. I have Navy Fish's docking alignment indicator because it's super helpful. I have Kerbal Engineer Redux. That's the giant bar on the top of the screen there, helping me out with delta V and thrust to weight ratio and torque and burn times and specific impulse and mass and cost and parts. It's a really great mod and I highly recommend it. The only other mods I'm using in this specific video are environmental visual enhancements, but I removed that after the second video, and I'll explain why when that video is released. So as we can see here, we're starting our very first rocket in a brand new save, which has 3 parts. We have a solid rocket motor, we have a capsule, and we have a parachute. I'm reducing the thrust on the solid rocket motor because if you're accelerating at 8 Gs on Kerbin, you're probably just going to be pushing into the atmosphere and it's going to be slowing you down. So about 3 Gs is really the magic zone for these super small rockets. Any faster and air's fighting you, and any lower, then you're experiencing way too many gravity losses. I thought about putting fins on it, but at 3 Gs, the SAS should definitely be able to hold it steady, especially with Jeb in the cockpit, because in science mode, all of your Kerbals start out with like 5 stars, 100%, so you shouldn't have to worry about leveling them up or anything like that, which is really helpful for engineers. So we have our very first rocket all set. We have a solid rocket motor, a capsule, and a parachute. That's all you need. We're naming it Let's Go Into the Sky, because that's probably an appropriate name for our very first rocket. Yep, action group should not need any of those, and we have Jeb in the pilot seat, 5 stars. Let's launch this bad boy. So environmental visual enhancements did really slow down my frame rates, and that's one of the reasons I got rid of it. The other reason is it looked like crap when we went up to high Kerbin orbit. So yeah, second video, I'll show you guys how bad it looked. And as you can see here, we have 3 parts, and our timer is yellow, so no thanks, I'm getting rid of that mod. Throttle up, not that it matters, and we're firing our solid rocket motor. Jeb there on the right side looking really happy. If it was an engineer or a scientist in the little right-hand side, then they would not be so happy, because Squad has, I think it's pretty cool that they basically added pilots look happy and anybody else looks really scared when you're launching rockets. This is a science mode save, so we're spamming some science as we're flying up. I could have put goo canisters on, but, you know, we have unlimited money. We can launch as many rockets as we want, so if we need goo canisters from the North Pole, I will launch a rocket solely to get goo science from the North Pole. Thank you very much. Accelerating very fast here. Apoapsis is approaching 10,000 meters, which is about 33,000 feet. For all you Americans like me out there who like their special system of measurement. This is in an atmosphere, so that will lower itself once our engine cuts out right here, because the air is slowing us down, so it's not just gravity. If we're launching this on the moon, we would definitely hit 11,000 meters, but since we're on Kerbin, the air is going to slow us down on our way up. Jeb looking really happy in the bottom right-hand corner, and what I'm thinking of doing now is just landing safely, because I already have my science while flying over Kerbin shores. That's as much science as I need for the next tech node. Some time warp shenanigans going on. We're just going to warp up to our apoapsis because no one wants to sit here and watch a rocket fly up into the sky when they could be doing other things like making a rocket fly up into the sky. And we're heading back down. So what I was worried about coming back down is letting Jeb die, which was not a super good thing to do on our very first flight. Screaming through the atmosphere on our way back down, literally a perfectly vertical flight. Just well, perfectly vertical except for the orbital rotation we got from sitting on the surface of a rotating planet. Our parachute, checking to make sure it wouldn't rip off, and deploying it. That's going to fully open at 1,000 meters AGL. Above ground level, that is, not mean sea level, or MSL. It's opening. Please slow down. That'd be great. And brilliant. 200 meters to spare before Jeb was smashed into Kerbin, which would have been terrible, especially on our very first flight. Probably would have reduced funding for our space program then. Some weird shadow shenanigans. That's probably environmental visual enhancements doing its thing. And Jeb floating gingerly to the ground. You guys can see that we did travel directly west from the launch pad, which means that when we went up there, we had the same rotational velocity as the planet, but the planet had a lower altitude, so we went west. If that makes any sense. Yeah, so basically we landed directly west of the launch pad, meaning that we did a perfectly vertical flight. Now that we're on the ground, let's do some more science spam. Of course, we want to get as much science as we can, so we EVA. We take an EVA report. Well, we take data and we store data, so now we can take our EVA report. And if you're on a ladder, then it shows that you're flying over somewhere, which is great. So we take one on the ladder, take data, store data, get back in the cockpit, take another crew report from the ground, and then we EVA, and we go onto the ground, and when we're on the ground, we can do a little bit more stuff. Very graceful, Jeb. Good job. You should take some ballerina lessons like professional football players. We take a EVA report on the ground from the crawlerway, take a surface sample from the crawlerway, 9 science. That's a really good deal. And then we plant a flag, because we want to plant a flag on every planet and moon that you can, and Kerbin is one that you can. So basically, we are moving towards our eventual objective. We have 1 planet down after our very first flight, which is pretty good in my opinion. We're of course naming this flag I Flew Into the Sky after our sweet rocket name, and that was pretty sweet. Is an appropriate plaque text for Jeb's first flight. Roughly 33,000 feet into the air. Let's recover him. But since Jeb wasn't in the spacecraft is still left on the crawlerway. So when we get back to our space center, we can see that we did get 16 science from the science Jeb had on him. But remember, we had a bunch of science left in the capsule. So that's the flag. We're not going to recover the flag. And because the capsule is right behind the flag, I can't actually see it from there. So we're going to the tracking station, and we can recover it from there. A bunch of science. Let's head over to the tech tree and see what we can purchase with our 27.8 science. Not bad for our very first flight. So we have 2 tech nodes available. We've got basic rocketry, yummy liquid fuel engine, a bigger SRB, and a fuel tank for that liquid fuel engine. That's not bad. Let's definitely research that. 5 science. That's a bargain. Below that, we have Engineering 101, basically good cockpit. For planes, the Science Junior, Commutron 16, and a stack decoupler. Without stack decouplers, you probably would never be able to get to orbit unless you had space planes or really efficient rockets, which is basically orange tanks and mainsails. But we definitely unlocked that, so we can get that sweet Science Junior. In survivability, we've got some fancy stuff. We really shouldn't need any of that. We got some radial decouplers and stability. Those will be helpful. In general rocketry, we've got the Thumper solid fuel booster. We've got some liquid fuel engines, but I'm really thinking we need some survivability. And, well, we couldn't really unlock the other ones. They were too expensive. So now we've got a bunch of new parts. Let's take a look at the tracking station to see where we want to send these sweet parts to. So we've got our flag on Kerbin, I Flew Into the Sky. And we want to place a flag on a bunch of other places. So, starting from the middle near Kerbal, we obviously can't place one on Kerbal because it's a star. But inside of Kerbal, we have Moho. Moho has no moons. Eve and Eve's moon Gilly. Kerbin, obviously we've checked that one off. But then we have the moon and the other moon, the Minmus. Moving on from there, we've got Duna and his moon Ike. Those will be a lot of fun. Got Drez. Drez is boring. I don't like Drez. Yeah. Jewel has 5 moons, which is going to be fun to send to. And the last one, Elu, with no moons, but it's the farthest one out there, so it will be fun to get there with our sweet science that we just got. Heading back into the VAB, it's time to make our second rocket. And with this rocket, we really want to go a little bit higher than just the upper atmosphere. So our objective is to be getting into space, which we will definitely be able to do with the tech that we just unlocked. So now let's take a look at the Mark 1 cockpit versus the Mark 1 command pod. The Mark 1 command pod weighs less, has less impact tolerance, but has a little bit more temperature tolerance. And I'm definitely thinking we're going with Mark 1 command pod, 14 meters per second crash tolerance. The Mark 1 cockpit has 45 meters per second crash tolerance, but it weighs a lot more. And it can't withstand as much temperature. So we're definitely going to stick with the Mark 1 command pod. New things, we got new fuel tanks, new SRBs, new liquid fuel engines, and the Hammer solid fuel booster is going to help propel us up into the sky. New Hammer solid fuel booster has more thrust, more propellant. It's just overall better. Structural, we got that sweet stacked decoupler. That's definitely going to help getting us into space. We could probably do it without the stacked decoupler, but I like decoupling things because it looks sick. So we're definitely going to use that on our final space rocket design. We're not planning on going into orbit with this rocket, but we're definitely going to go up beyond 70 kilometers into space. So let's dump that old fully solid fuel booster, and let's get some appropriate stuff for the bottom, starting off with a stacked decoupler so we can get rid of our spent stage beneath us, so our parachute isn't holding as much weight. We're going to have a liquid-fueled upper stage, just so we can control it a little bit more, so we don't go too high, and 4 fuel tanks should be good. Throwing on the Reliant liquid-fueled engine. This does not have thrust vectoring, but it has better thrust-to-weight ratio than the one that follows, which is the gimbaled engine. Let's throw another stacked decoupler on there, and let's put a solid fuel booster on the bottom. The new Hammer one should do just fine. I'm not going to adjust the thrust on that because we have about 2.88 thrust-to-weight ratio. That's just about right. And then, of course, we have a 4 thrust-to-weight ratio with our liquid-fueled engine, but that's throttleable, so I can change what thrust-to-weight ratio we have, so I don't exceed our limits. We're going to throw a bunch of fins on this bottom stage, just so we have some static stability, and Jeb's not having to do it all. We're going to throw some more fins right there on the top, so when we dump that stage, we're still stable. But less is more when you're using fins. Well, not really, but at least in this case, less is more. So this should definitely be able to get us into space, no problems at all. We have about 2,500 meters per second of delta V. You can see that in the top right corner. Talking about science, let's definitely throw some science on there. We could do 4 goo canisters, but really we only need like 2 or 3. Want to keep it symmetrical, obviously. Don't want to have too many goo canisters on one side. We go with 2, but now that I'm thinking about it, we definitely want to have those on the capsule, so we actually recover them when we come down and get rid of that liquid-fueled stage. Other science, not going to take a science junior along, but we definitely have our crew report and our EVA report. We're going to name it something sweet this time. 2 stages! Exclamation point. That's appropriate for our very first rocket with more than 1 stage. As we load up onto the launch pad here, we can see that it takes a little bit because of environmental visual enhancements, but you know what? That's okay. We're going to throttle up here. Not that it actually matters for the first stage, but for the second stage it definitely does. And let's launch this bad boy into space, hopefully. When I recorded this, I was pretty sure it'd get into space, but hindsight is 20/20, and I can guarantee you that we do get above 70 kilometers. This SRB is throwing us up into the sky. We're getting some mad G's right here. I don't have Kerbal Engineer open, but you can see from the G meter on the bottom right, we are exceeding the 2G limitation because we have shed some weight. So we're accelerating pretty fast here. We're starting to get some little atmospheric effects here on our rocket, which means that we're going a little bit too fast, but you know what? That's okay. We have a bunch of delta V. As our fins heat up, really hope those don't explode, but they're in the green right now, so we should be alright. And their SRB cuts out, and I wait a little bit to stage just to make sure that we're not going to flip out when we stage to our liquid-fueled engine, and we fire that guy off. And as you can see, we're almost 5 Gs of acceleration, so I throttle that down a lot because these atmospheric effects are telling me that we're going too fast, and the atmosphere is taking a lot of the energy that we're putting into our rocket. So I'm basically doing the least efficient thing possible, and burning at 1G. So we're not slowing down, but we're not really speeding up. So if I kept going like that, we'd be basically going the same speed forever until we ran out of fuel. But since we get higher up into the atmosphere, we're going to throttle up. We can pump more energy into our rocket because there's less air to slow us down. We're doing some science while we're up here, some mystery goo observations, and we are experiencing quite a few Gs, right about 4 Gs there, getting the mystery goo while flying at Kerbin. And as we can see, our atmospheric effects are turning red, meaning that we are getting into the shock heating zone of the atmosphere, which starts at about 20 kilometers, maybe 18 kilometers, but we really shouldn't have to worry about heating for this rocket because we honestly aren't going that fast. Anything under 1,500 meters per second, you really won't be getting heating from the atmosphere. We will get some heating effects on our fins, but that's really because of our engine is bleeding heat into the fuel tank, and the fins have the lowest heat tolerance of any of the parts on this rocket. I do I do worry about the parachutes for these kind of rockets because the parachutes tend to explode a lot, but we cut our engine here. Apoapsis is above 150 kilometers, so we definitely are in space. I'm not sure what high altitude science is right now, but I don't think we have it. The only thing I'm worried about is if we go too high, we're basically going straight up. So when we hit the atmosphere, we only have 70 kilometers to slow down, as opposed to deorbiting, you have hundreds of kilometers to slow down as you travel laterally across Kerbin. So we're getting up into space to get our science spam on, and as we pass 70 kilometers, we can see we are now in space. So let's do some sweet, sweet science. We're starting out with a mystery goo observations, taking those in space, and that does give us quite a bunch of science. We're also going to do an EVA report from Jeb, and while he's out there, he's going to do the take data, store data thing, and he's taking the data from the goo canisters. Now, he's not a scientist, so goo canisters are useless from now on, but if they do explode on reentry, I'd like to have the data, and I don't want to have to launch another rocket up again, not because we have credits, but because that takes time, and I really don't want to have to be launching the same rockets over and over again because I made stupid mistakes like not collecting the data. Science spam continues, crew report from space, la-da-da-da-da, a lot of fun stuff. And we are above 106 kilometers, time accelerating up to our apoapsis to see if we are in high altitude science zone, but as it turns out, we are not, so we're going to do the crew report. We're overriding it, but we're still near Kerbin, so yeah, it's basically the same crew report. And now we're heading back down. So, basically, from now on, I'm just worried about Jeb dying because of heating or the parachute not deploying or the parachute not deploying fast enough, la da 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 da. I just don't want Jeb to die because he has a bunch of science with him, and I'd like to get that science. So we point retrograde, and we still have a bunch of fuel left, so we're basically just going to slow us down with our engine so the atmosphere doesn't have to do it. Slowing us right down, engine cuts out of fuel, so basically just going to ditch that. SAS goes nuts here for a little bit. It's wiggling all over the place. It's not holding my heading, so I turn SAS off, wiggle Jeb around a little bit, trying to wake him back up, and turn SAS back on, and somehow he can magically control the spacecraft, so good for him. We have a bunch of electric charge in these capsules, so we shouldn't have to worry about taking batteries along until we're doing some moon missions or something like that, which should probably be episode 3, so stay tuned for that coming up soon. 49 kilometers, 48 kilometers, 47 kilometers. We're screaming through the atmosphere, more than a kilometer per second, literally straight down. So I'm very concerned about Jeb not slowing down fast enough and crashing into Kerbin and dying in a fiery explosion, which would really suck for our second mission into space. Well, first mission into space, second flight overall. We are basically, again, directly west of the Kerbal Space Center, meaning we basically went straight up. So that was a very efficient launch. Not efficient if we want to do it to orbit, but it's efficient for getting altitude. Huge shock heating effects, turning SAS off so we're not wasting battery trying to hold attitude against the onslaught of air moving at more than a kilometer per second. And Jeb's slowing right down. He's gone as fast as he will go, and the air is slowing him down at 5 Gs, 6 Gs, 7 Gs. Yikes, those are pretty high G loadings. But of course, Jeb can survive infinite Gs because he's a Kerbal, and Kerbals are really awesome. The stage below us is at 2.2 kilometers, and it's about to smash into the ground. We're about 5 kilometers up and 4 kilometers off the ground. So that means that that stage there is right about to hit the ground. Would not want to be on that. There it goes, exploding. We deploy our parachute, and again, this one's going to open at 1,000 meters AGL. And we cut it close here. That stage is just exploding all over the place. Glad I wasn't on it. We don't have SAS on. Stage is opening. Please slow down. And the parachute completely opens and slows us down to the comfortable 6 meters per second at 300 meters AGL. So that was pretty close. I'm definitely going to have to start putting better parachute, well, not better parachutes, but having to open my parachutes earlier on the next flights, especially from orbit, where we have a lot of speed. There's the environmental visual enhancements bug with the parachute again, and we come out of time warp right before we hit the ground because I've had some shenanigans happen where we just kind of go right through Kerbin with time warp. So now that Jeb's on the ground, we're going to start some science spam. Boom, 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 science spam, getting a bunch of science, taking and storing the data, and now we can recover our vessel. I didn't show you that science spam because it took a little bit, and it's the same thing you guys have already seen from the KSP videos. 63 science. We have 61 science from that mission, and so let's unlock some awesome, awesome tech nodes. There's our beautiful flag from our very first flight. First planet already has a flag on it, go us, and we've already been to space. So looking at some of these tech nodes, I'm liking this general rocketry section, better engines, better SRBs, and bigger fuel tanks. I like the whole line on the very top of the screen. Those are all good stuff. Big engines, big fuel tanks. Those are the kind of stuff I like for rocketry. I'm really not into the whole KSP space planes thing because launching a rocket is honestly way easier, and like recovering it, who cares about recovering it if you don't have credits? For a career mode, credits is a lot of fun. Well, space planes are a lot of fun because you get to keep a lot of your credits, but you know, rockets, expendable, great. So we get general rocketry, getting that new beautiful SRB and the swivel engine. We don't quite have enough for the advanced rocketry. Those 45 science and we have 43, so we unlock stability, giving us those radial decouplers, which will be really helpful in getting us into orbit, which will be our next episode. We only have 25 science. We can't get any of the next tech nodes, but you know what? We did well for our first episode, going from the ground into space in only 2 launches, which is way better than I did when I first started KSP. Getting into orbit took about 25 launches, which is a little bit embarrassing, but you got to do what you got to do on your first round with KSP. So this was our first video with Kerbal Space Program. This is our science mode speedrun to place a flag on every planet and moon in the Kerbal system that you can land on. I really hope you guys like this episode. If you have some KSP suggestions or you just don't want me to stop playing, let me know in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, leave a thumbs up down below and stay tuned for more awesome KSP videos.